The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Only one more Monday without a football game to talk about. That's how close we are. 12 days until it is football time in Tennessee, and we are loaded up with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We'll take a look at Tennessee's two-deep wide receiver rotation, a little bit of prediction after the Vols hold their first scrimmage of the weekend. In that scrimmage, running back was a concern. How big of a concern we'll discuss. Who is the surprise of Tennessee's preseason camp? You haven't heard this young man's name, but he will be at least a 2 or 3 year starter for Tennessee. Mark it down. This day in Tennessee sports history, the stat of the day. Could the Vols actually set a new school record in sacks? It's quite possible because Bill Connolly of ESPN has James Pierce with a ton of sacks. Michigan names Jim Harbaugh the honorary captain after basically the NCAA came down on Michigan, came down on Harbaugh, but nobody really cares because it's the NCAA. And as Colorado gone from intriguing to being a joke, I think Deion Sanders is kind of the next Derek Dooley. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
Those are fighting words in the coaching circles, aren't they?
They
tell
are.
someone to the next Derek Dooley.
They are fighting words. Unless you're just a coordinator, then you're like, okay, well, you're pretty good then.
And lucky for you, Deion was a very soft player. He didn't like to tackle anyway, so it's not like he's going to fight.
He did not like to tackle. You're correct. He could tackle, but he did not like to tackle. But in all honesty, that would be like you with your voice screaming in the backyard as loud as you can. You wouldn't want to risk your voice. He didn't want to risk his physical ability, right?
That's true. That's true. I guess we could look at it like, are you saying he was being a team player when he didn't like to tackle, Dave? And he wasn't thinking about himself?
The very nice way for saying soft, I think, is what that is. Portions of the program brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company that could tell you need a new unit when you just need a part or some coolant. Why spend thousands or more? Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. It is time for today's tough question. Please hit the like and subscribe button. We're talking Tennessee receivers now on Off the Hook Sports.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, so we know a little bit more about Tennessee's two-deep receiver rotation after the first scrimmage. So, Caleb Calhoun, what do we know? Because other than Brew McCoy, there's not a player who's going to be held out an extended amount of time or a significant amount of time because of injuries. We're going to talk about running backs. That's not the situation there. We're going to talk about offensive line. Well, there's nothing wrong with resting Cooper Mays a little bit more than you might. But at receiver, other than Brew McCoy, there are no extenuating circumstances such as injury or a proven player to affect the amount of snaps that given player gets. Therefore, I think we can project Tennessee's two deep in the wide receiver group pretty accurately, even though we're just talking about mid-August. What do you think?
Oh, I think we can project the two deep. I actually think we can project the main wideout and the slot guy. It's who's going to start for that other number 2 wideout spot. That's the question. So do we want to just run down the list real quick of what we can project?
Yes. So Brew McCoy's the lock, even though he might have been limited in the scrimmage on Friday. So he's the lock, right? If they're holding him out, not because of his play, but because he had that horrific injury. So that would be the lock, right?
Yeah. Brew McCoy is absolutely the lock, 100%.
Okay.
After Brew McCoy, I think Squirrel White is the person who will line up in the slot for Tennessee. Squirrel White will be the main slot guy. I think Braylon Staley might back him up. Dante Thornton could move over there, but by and large, I think that's how you're going to look at it. The question becomes the number 2 wideout spot. And I think there is a fight between Mike Matthews, Brew McCoy, and Chris Brazzell for that. I made a prediction that Mike Matthews was so good that he would actually take the spot midway through the year, the way you thought Boo Carter would, even though you think Boo Carter will just now start at safety. I thought Mike Matthews was going to be that good. But I've been reading through practices that it sounds like Chris Brazzell's the real deal, the Tulane transfer at receiver.
Yeah, I think Brazzell is the real deal. So I'm going to say McCoy, Brazzell, and Squirrel White in some shape, form, or fashion. Now, I know that kind of flies in the face of what we believed earlier, that Brazzell would play slot, and we all think White would play slot. I think they're going to find a way to make it work. I think you're going to see an evolution of this offense where they play a little bit more 4 wide, and I think you're going to see that Tennessee has the receivers to be able to do that. Now, you talk about the second string, who are the second group of guys. And you're right, there could be situations where you play a guy who's not quite as good because he's a better fit at slot than wide out, and I get that. And obviously the guy that we would be talking about is Dante Thornton, as they continually find a place for him. Is he your slot guy? Is he your outside guy? I think he's your outside guy based off body type, but they've certainly tried to force him in at slot. Caleb, how important is figuring out what Dante Thornton does well? Portions of the program brought to you by Don Self at State Farm. Customer service matters when you're trying to get that claim, not just prices on the front end. For over 40 years, Don Self at State Farm has been in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126 or go to donself.net, donself.net. How key is Dante Thornton to determining? He's kind of the crossroad player. If he ends up being a great wideout, then you adjust things a little bit, and maybe you team him up with Brew McCoy. If he ends up being a great slot receiver, maybe you slide Brazzell or White outside. White doesn't feel like a wideout to me. He feels like a slot. Brazzell feels like he has a little bit more flexibility. But Dante Thornton is really the key as far as the 2 deep and the path that this group of receivers takes throughout the season.
Yeah, and we have no idea what we're going to get, what they're going to get in Dante Thornton, what we're going to see from him because of the injuries from last year.
And the inconsistency and putting too much pressure on himself. You're right. I hate the word X factor because we use it too much, but he is an X factor at wide receiver. Does he come in with the best attitude ever or the same attitude that he had last year?
Yeah, and maybe you want some of the attitude he had last year, because based on what you told me, it sounds like he was at least trying his, he was trying really hard. No, he did seem like he was actually committed to trying to be the best receiver he could. He just put a little more pressure on himself than he should have. Dante Thornton will determine if they go 3 or 4 wide. I don't think they're going to play Matthews and Brazzell together. If what we're saying is true, Matthews is the odd man out this year as a freshman. Do you think that's the case, or do you think they're going to have, or do you think Mike Matthews is so good they're going to have to put him on the field at some point?
I think I'm the opposite from you. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think being a freshman in this group that's so deep means you're probably not going to play no matter how good you are. I think Randy Moss could show up and have trouble getting on the field with this group.
Dan, you were so stuck in the 90s. You're such a 90s guy. Oh, he's a freshman, and you can't play the freshman. They need to develop in the system. Yes. Okay.
I don't think this is an easy offense to learn for a receiver. And I think
it's harder for a receiver than it is for a quarterback.
Your quarterback look stupid really quick. And I don't think they want to make Nico look stupid. I think that's incredibly important. What do you think of Matthews? Is he a bona fide starter, or is he a bona fide contributor? What is he, if you had to predict?
I think by the middle of the year, he's a bona fide starter. I think he's that good. I think he's that rare talent. I think Chris Brazzell's hands, though. Here's what I will say. He's not going to supplant Brew McCoy. It's Brew McCoy's last year. Heupel's going to want to, even if he were better, Heupel would make Brew McCoy the go-to guy all year. The only thing I will say is, even though I think Matthews is better, I think Brazzell does have better hands. I think Chris Brazzell has the best hands of anybody in this group, honestly. And I think you want your complimentary wideout to be a hands guy, don't you? More than anything else.
Would think so.
So I think that's what they're going to use him for. They want Brazel to be the hands guy on the other side. They want Brew McCoy to be the dictate coverage, go-to wideout, and then they want Squirrel White to be Jalen Hyatt.
I think they want Squirrel White to be Jalen Hyatt, and I think he's a freaky good athlete. I just don't know that he has the top-end speed to do that. And let's face it, the top-end speed is what made Jalen Hyatt, what made the slot receiver position, and what made this offense in 2022. Is it not?
Yeah, but you don't think Squirrel White's as fast as Jalen Hyatt?
I don't know that he has top end. But we'll see. I mean, I think he has better quicks, and I think there's a lot of things he can do in that is almost equally as beneficial. I just think Jalen Hyatt had some pretty special top end speed that we've overlooked to some extent. It is time for today's tough question. We do that right now. Today's tough question brought to you by friends at Work Trucks. They're all about trucks, right truck, right place, right time. Work Trucks LLC. That's Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
How, on a scale of 1 to 10, should Tennessee fans be concerned about the tailback position? Answer that question first, if you don't mind, Caleb, and then explain to me why at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting you said Tennessee should be very concerned. What say you, Caleb Calhoun, and let's hear from you on the message board.
They should be through the roof concerned. I might even make it an 11, quite honestly, at this point. And here is the issue. Tennessee, for those who don't know, held Dylan Sampson out of the first scrimmage Friday. No issue there. That's fine.
Sure. Proven guy. He's completely healthy. There's no cause for concern based off everything that I've been told.
Yes, exactly. They then proceeded to give Deshaun Bishop the primary amount of reps. Josh Heupel said after the game, he was asked who stood out. The first person he said was Deshaun Bishop had a really nice night. I'm sorry, guys. That means he took the most reps in scrimmage. That means Peyton Lewis is not ready. That means Tennessee doesn't have a feature back. I don't care what you guys say. Deshaun Bishop can't be a feature back. Cam Seldon can't be a feature back. Dylan Sampson can't be a feature back. Khalifa Keith can't be a feature back. Peyton Lewis is the only one on this list that can do that, okay? And Deshaun Bishop is kind of the build of a feature back, but he's just not going to be good enough. So for him to get the most reps, and that suggests Peyton Lewis has not come along. And Peyton Lewis not coming along is a huge, huge issue for Tennessee. They should be significantly concerned about the running backs, honestly. They got problems. I'm just going to say they have problems. Deshaun Bishop took the most reps out of desperation on Friday, more than anything else.
So today's tough question, I posted the poll, is also our poll on the YouTube page. And it is, I am blank about Tennessee's running back position. Very concerned or okay with it. So we'll keep an eye on that. I'm okay with it because I think that Tennessee has options that they didn't have with Dylan Sampson out of the backfield, extended running plays via the pass, and I think he'll be able to avoid contact. Now, I think the question I have is Khalifa Keith. Is there a guy that's going to be able to power in there in the A and B gap and be the running team that this team has been and prided itself on under Josh Heupel? Now, Peyton Lewis, I'm not surprised as a freshman, and I may seem like old fuddy-duddy Dave, but the first scrimmage and being a true freshman, he probably does not have the best grasp of pass protection, and it's probably not a bad idea to remind him he's a freshman either, Caleb, to be real honest with you. So I think that probably was a factor in Peyton Lewis not being ready. I want to take a step back on Deshaun Bishop because he felt like just the local guy that Tennessee took as a feel-good story, right? But he's hung around. And we're not in spring camp right now. If we were in spring camp, Caleb, I have seen so many tailbacks just like Deshaun Bishop have big spring camps and disappear. Maybe you remember Kirsten Biggers. Maybe you remember Michael Stewart, who actually went on to have a good career at Hawaii. I could go on. David Yancey. Oh, he was an engineering major. Do you remember any of these names, Caleb?
I remember David Yancey. That's the only one.
Okay, those were all guys that had huge springs at running back. And you're thinking, oh, they're going to be stars. No, they were just taking up carries because Tennessee didn't want to bang up their go-to back. This is preseason camp. So there is reason to be concerned in scrimmage number 2 if you have a situation in which Yancey is, I'm sorry, not Yancey, Bishop. If you have Bishop as your leading talk out of the tailback position, that would be concerning. However, this is preseason camp, and he's hung around now for 3 years, Caleb. I think it's time we give Deshaun Bishop his due. This is preseason camp. This is not spring camp. Maybe he's better than we all think. The fact that he's participating in the first scrimmage extensively is a sign of that. And I think we're selling Deshaun Bishop short.
You don't think he's just a smart person thinking, hey, I may not play, but I'm getting a free degree. And I get to be a contributor on the team he probably grew up as a fan of his whole life. What if he wasn't even really thinking that hard about football? You know, there are kids like that.
Well, I think that was a factor. I think that also, I've reported this before. It hasn't really been out there, but there's a group, and I don't know that Bishop is one of them, but there's a group putting together what is essentially NIL for walk-ons. So they're providing money to walk on. So it's not as if he had to make the decision to come to Tennessee as opposed to go to a much smaller school to get a scholarship. So yeah, I think there's some of that, but I think you're implying he came to Tennessee not expecting to compete for a starting position.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm implying.
I would have agreed with you 7 days ago before he's a standout in Tennessee's first scrimmage. And then I'm going to say Deshaun Bishop can be a real player in the fall. Now, the question is, can he be a featured back in the fall? And that would be very surprising.
Well, if he can be a real player, I'll say this. If he can be average, and guys, a running back, a feature back only needs to be average in Tennessee's system. Their offense was through the roof, record-setting in 2022, and Jabari Small was their main running back. Like Jabari Small, hard runner, smart player, average talent. Right, Dave? Is that safe to say?
Yes.
So you only need to be average. But he's the only one, but Peyton Lewis is the only one I felt that could be at least average at all the aspects of playing running back. Dylan Sampson will never be better than below average at pass blocking.
Will you do me a favor?
Sure.
Okay, not to get you sidetracked. I'm sorry. Will you look up Jabari Small's size going into the 2022 season? Is there a way that we could find that? Because I know that he put on 15 pounds and he wasn't very big. Bishop's not very big. Sampson's not very big. Portions of the program, while you're checking on that, brought to you by our friends at Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the perfect vehicle right there and ready for you. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down. It has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks with an X does, intent on offering that while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standard to be put to work. The process is quick and easy when choosing a truck from Work Trucks. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks. They've got that Knapheide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, anything special. Work Trucks with an X carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville and downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go to Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. The perfect vehicle you have to have. Work Trucks, proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. How big was Jabari Small going in?
5'11", 213.
So he's 13 pounds heavier than Dylan Sampson. How much does that 13 pounds carry in your mind as a feature tailback?
Well, I don't just think it's the weight. I think it's the desire. I think Dylan Sampson's protecting himself. People talk about his lightweight. I watched him last year in that Citrus Bowl. That wasn't a weight thing. That was, I don't want to get touched by this guy coming at me.
So he's not a physical player.
No, he's soft. He's soft, and I think he's protecting himself and has no care whatsoever if his quarterback gets rocked.
Well, how about finesse? I don't know that he's soft. How about more of a finesse player?
I think more of just can we say selfish player and is thinking about his NFL future and doesn't really care.
Okay, well, if that's I don't think that was the case last year. And from all I've been told, he is a really selfless player. But if he's thinking about his NFL future, you know what he better do? He better pass block this upcoming year, because the NFL is a passing league too, just like Josh Heupel's offense is a passing offense. So he better pass block, and he better prove that he can run the football between the tackles at times. Now, I know the NFL is going to find ways to utilize him in other ways, and they're not going to have an issue of not having a featured back theoretically in the NFL. But I do think Tennessee has that issue. And I think Tennessee is a Jalen Wright away from saying this is the ideal offense for Josh Heupel. But they don't have him, and I think they have to make do. So if they have to make do with Dylan Sampson as a featured back, and Peyton Lewis is not the guy, you just said that they don't have to have an elite runner, Caleb. Does this ultimately affect Tennessee's success level?
Yes. Tennessee, a lot of their offense is driven by their ability to run the football. I mean, it absolutely affects their success level. I mean, again, I can't stress that enough. This is a huge deal if they don't have I don't want to say elite runner, a complete runner. If they don't have a complete back, yes, it's a really, really, really big deal.
Okay. My stance on this is I think Dylan Sampson can be that back. I don't think we have seen all of Josh Heupel's offense, and I think you'll find ways to get him outside of the pocket and do different things. I'll remind you that portions of the program are always brought to you by our good friend T. Scott Jones and Banks & Jones, the show represented by Banks & Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Let me ask you a question, Caleb. Has there been one player we mentioned since preseason camp began that we didn't mention over the summer? In other words, a guy that just comes out of nowhere, because nowadays with the coverage of individual teams and especially Tennessee, that's difficult to do.
Yeah, I agree. Particularly with the way Heupel runs everything, it becomes very difficult to do that, particularly in fall camp. You don't really know much until you see them on the field, right?
Agreed. Who would you say to this point in your mind has had the biggest impact in terms of the 2 weeks into fall camp and improving themselves?
I would have said Chris Brazzell, because like I said, it's funny because Chris Brazzell stood out in the spring too, but I take everything that happens in the spring with a grain of salt. So I just thought Mike Matthews was going to win that job, that number 2 wideout job. I thought a healthy Dante Thornton would be a bigger threat, but Chris Brazzell is apparently standing out at receiver in the spring, and that's thrown me off a lot.
I think that he is very good. I think that Tennessee ultimately has a good problem at receiver, and that is they had a lot of depth. Now, they have a lot of depth. We have talked a lot about the center position, and we both think that Tennessee would have fared much better against Florida, quite possibly had won, had the Vols not had to go with a backup center that was it Dane Davis that played in front of Cooper Mays at Florida. Okay.
I thought it was Ollie Lane who did it last year.
It was Ollie Lane. I'm sorry. Either way, they were not prepared to be without Cooper Mays. But the name you need to know, and a guy that's going to start 2 years, barring injury, for Tennessee, is William Satterwhite. True freshman from Akron, Ohio, signed with the Vols over Clemson and Alabama as a 4-star prospect. Don't get excited about centers a lot, but listen to what Mays had, and be sure and watch the Vol Report with Cooper Mays. That is right there on our YouTube channel. Please hit the like and subscribe button. All kinds of special things coming down the pike. He said, when I asked about Bison Lang, he said, quote, Bison has gotten better throughout the first little bit of camp. He's doing better. We've also got a new young guy, William Satterwhite, who's also working at the center spot. He's done a really, really good job as well, especially for being a young guy. Reminds me a lot of me, and they've been doing a good job. So the reason I wanted to read the quote is when somebody offers up a name, that means they've been very impressed. If I said, and I went down the roster, what do you think about William Satterfield? Oh, he's done great. Well, that's not exactly a ringing endorsement. What's Cooper supposed to say? Man, that guy's hot garbage. No, he's not going to say that. So, but when he offers up a name, that to me is extremely strong. Now, do I think that William Satterwhite, if he is like Cooper, who he said reminds him of, if he's like Cooper, he needs some time to develop. So I don't think he's going to be Tennessee's number 2 center right now. But you know that I've had questions about Bison Lang and the fact that he wasn't ready last year when Cooper went down. If you want me to predict right now, I think by next year, let's assume Cooper Mays is 100% healthy all year. Because I think if they had to sub for Cooper at this point, it might be Dane Davis or something goofy. But as of next year, I think William Satterwhite's going to be your starter. And I think Bison Lang is either going to find his home at backup center, some other school, or guard for Tennessee. Since I talked to Cooper, I watched a good bit of Satterwhite and Bison Lang. Satterwhite has a special spring, a fast twitch ability that is tough to replicate at center because one of your hands has to be between your legs or snapping the ball out of the shotgun. But he's able to fast twitch at a different level than Bison Lang. Let's also look at I want to look at their size too. But first, let me get your thoughts on offering up a William Satterwhite. What did you think of Cooper Mays touting him as perhaps the next very good Tennessee offensive lineman?
You know, I did consider William Satterwhite a very, very big pickup when he committed to Tennessee back in July of 2023, interestingly enough.
And then we kind of lost him, didn't we?
We did, but we talked about, Tennessee nailed him out of Ohio as a universal 4-star. He was a interior offensive lineman at 6'3", 300 pounds. They got him last July when they locked him up. I thought it was a huge deal. So but I thought he was a huge deal as a guy who was going to play down the road. Sounds like he could be fast tracked to play maybe even some this year because of the questions about the offensive line rotation, that really stands out. That I did not see that coming, Dave.
Yeah, I think that he will play. I think he'll play some in garbage time at the very least. I don't want to project that he will play significant time because significant time you would be talking about somebody getting hurt, right? So let's look. Here's my biggest factor, and I don't want to be that guy, but I guess I'm going to be because those that have followed my career know that I put on a pound or two, a time or two. So, but here's why I like Satterwhite. Because Satterwhite is listed at 6'3", 340 pounds, which I realize sounds extremely big.
Picked up 40 pounds from when he signed.
Sorry.
By the way.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry. He's listed at 6'3", 300 pounds. Sorry, I misspoke.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Bison Lang is listed at 6'4", 340 pounds. Guys, unless there's a massive difference in muscle density, you can just do the math real quick at 6'3", 300 as opposed to 6'4", 340. Your BMI, your body mass index, and you're probably innately carrying much more muscle than fat. Bison Lang listed at 6'4", 340 pounds after he's had a year in this system. I'm sorry, that's heavy. That's heavy. And Satterwhite at 6'3", 300 pounds feels a lot more like a good fit. So I'm not willing to rule out that if Tennessee middle of the season needed somebody to fill in for Cooper Mays, that Satterwhite wouldn't be the guy. Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And that's kind of shocking because playing center in this system isn't just about your body type. I mean, there's a lot you have to know. So if we're saying this, what we're really saying is William Satterwhite is a very smart player who picks things up very quickly.
You brought up a really good point. So I think if something happens to Coop midseason and somebody has to run out there for a little bit and it's not Satterwhite, then he probably doesn't have the mental grasp, which is understandable, right?
Right, exactly.
I mean, he's just showed up on campus. I can't imagine gesting all of this offense in just a matter of months. Hook's Hangouts, as a matter of fact. One is Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org. AsiaCafe.org. Caleb, I I Bison Lang has to really look at himself this year and determine if this is something he really wants. Because if he really wants it, perhaps it would be a better fit for him somewhere else that relies on bigger offensive linemen instead of guys that are a little bit lighter and have better feet. I feel like there's a chance, and I don't want to dump on Bison Lang here, but I feel like there's a chance that this was a guy that Tennessee took because they had to have a dude as opposed to, hey, we really, really want this guy.
Well, but I did think they were trying to make him work last year, like
I do
work
too.
out at and so that's where I'm a little bit thrown off on this. But one of the things I will say is that you can be big in this system and be effective. I mean, Javonte Spraggins is huge. He's massive and he's able to run, but it is tricky. So I don't know how it will work out. I'm totally with you on that. It is debatable, but I just put a lot of stock in the idea that Bison Lang would be ready to go at this point, which totally throws me off.
I did too. I'm not saying he's not. You can go back and listen to the Vol Report with Cooper Mays, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, and get his feel for it. I just thought it was interesting that he brought up a freshman. By the way, it wasn't a freshman, but it was an inexperienced center that started for Tennessee in their 1998 team when they won a national championship. You can own the book. Just click on the QR code written by Moi, Celebrate 98, the untold stories behind Tennessee's 1998 national championship. It is available at offthehooksports.com, and we would greatly appreciate you checking those out. As always, portions of the program brought to you by our good friends at Ray Varner Ford.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
So do you feel better about Tennessee's offensive line or any different based off what I gave you this Satterwhite news? And I'll ask the message board that as well.
It's kind of the Deshaun Bishop thing, I got to be honest with you. Sounds like they're using Satterwhite because they're disappointed in people like Bison Lang, like you mentioned, and that's going to be an issue for Tennessee long term. That's something they've really got to address.
Yeah. And now, Travis, you said Alabama had a 400-pound nose guard, but this is different. I want my offensive linemen, especially in this system, to be able to move around. 340 ain't bad. I don't know that if you want to look up Tennessee's, I think I have them pulled up right now. Tennessee's biggest offensive line would be Lance Hurd at this point, right? And he's about 340, but he's also like 6 foot.
I would have called Javonte Spraggins, but you might be right.
Okay. Nevertheless, I don't think if you're choosing in recruiting as opposed to the big mauler, as opposed to the guy that has better feet and is a little bit lighter, are you erring on which side?
I mean, you're going with the guy with the better feet. But I will say your interior is actually not as important with Heupel's system with this. That's where I was at. It's on the interior in Heupel's system. They still have to be conditioned well, but I mean, again, Javonte Spraggins has been just absolutely. How big is Javonte Spraggins? I just can't. I got to look that up again because Spraggins is. I'm pulling it up now. I mean, he's 6'3", 330.
Yeah, pretty good size. Pretty good size. I think that Tennessee is an offense that, yes, they would like the big run maulers, but Caleb, how are they going to run the football most oftentimes? It's by the safeties afraid to get into the box, right? And you're worried about giving up plays over the top. That's how you do it, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. That's what you want to do, but you got to be able to move the ball running to be able to hit those. So, but yeah, it's and the conditioning is a huge part of that, but it's kind of intriguing. I'm not sure how it would work out with size, but size has worked out at Tennessee to this point.
Now, you said, and Travis agreed with you on the message board brought to you by TriStar Hats, the latest in TriStar. Go to the original hats, apparel, and more. TriStarHatsCo.com, TriStarHatsCo.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. You can see it right there. Oh, right there. You can see the TriStar hat right there. It is awesome. They've got orange as well. So do you say the interior is the least important of Tennessee's offensive line? Because why, Caleb? Because the tackles have to be so good in pass protection and can't let Tennessee's quarterback get hit? Is that part of your reasoning?
No, the interior has to be good because they have to – Josh Heupel's vertical rushing attack is so crucial. So they have to spurn the vertical rushing attack. That's how you get the big passing plays over the top. And it really just comes down to the guards and the centers doing their job. I think the tackles are kind of overrated in the system, if you really want me to be honest.
Yes. So are you saying all offensive linemen are overrated in this system?
No, I said tackles are overrated in this system. And I'm going to stick with that, funny enough.
But guards are not.
Guards are not. Tackles are, guards are not.
Okay. Tennessee will have this many all-SEC offensive linemen following the season. I'll ask you that, and it's brought to you by Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Licensed in over 40 states, Medicare Misty, no charge to you, can help you with your Medicare needs. Please check her out and tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. Caleb, how many Tennessee offensive linemen will make All-SEC postseason? For the record, only 2 players, Brew McCoy and Cooper Mays, made the first 2 teams at preseason All-SEC media days. That was Cooper Mays and was it Squirrel, or did they give Brew the nod with the injury? It was Squirrel, right?
Yeah, I think so.
White, right? White, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If it ain't white, you ain't right. Modern Family. It's a joke, guys. Okay.
All right.
We got clips.
Hey, by the way, I mentioned to Fred White one time. I said, hey, we could call your segment the White Way. And he says, no. All right. So, Caleb.
The wrong way. Usually, there's a wrong way and a white way.
There's okay, Caleb. So the offensive linemen that could be all SEC players. Candidates would be first. Possible all SEC offensive linemen. Cooper Mays, obviously. Give me your others.
Oh, Javonte Spraggins, Lance Hurd, and John Campbell Jr. could all be all SEC. I don't know if they all will, but they all could be all SEC. Very easily.
Hey now.
I agree with all those. Now, which ones will be all SEC offensive linemen? You mean you give mine first?
Yeah, you go ahead and go.
It'll be Cooper and Spraggins. I don't think any of the other guys, because I think the tackles are too good in the SEC this year. So I'll add Spraggins to the list. The guy that would ultimately change Tennessee's future the most would be Andre Keurig if he was all SEC, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, Caleb, are you willing to add Spraggins? And would you add Hurd? Who else would you add?
No, I had Spraggins and Hurd. I had Spraggins, Hurd, and Campbell.
Okay. Well, no, the first question was you think could be. The second you think will be. So now you're in prediction mode.
Oh, okay. I'm going 3. May, Spraggins, and Campbell.
Pretty strong. Spraggins and Mays. Lance agrees with me. Lance says, I feel pretty optimistic about the offensive line this year. Heupel has more depth. Heupel has more depth and talent this year to work with. I'll worry about the depth. That's the only thing I might disagree with you on there. That concerns me. 2 minutes, and we'll have this day in Tennessee sports history and why the Vols could be the best ever in the history of Tennessee football of pressuring the quarterback. This show represented by Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones, Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. BanksandJones.com.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
This day in Tennessee sports history, give me a tease. What do you got? Tease me with this day in Tennessee sports history. Coming up on the program, could the Vols set a school record in sacks? Yes, and it's not just us saying so. It is ESPN. Michigan will name Jim Harbaugh an honorary captain. Cheat, everybody. It doesn't matter because the NCAA has no power. The stat of the day, and has Colorado gone from intriguing to a complete joke? Why do you think that Deion Sanders may be the next Derek Dooley? Also, State of Vols recruiting in Georgia. They're doing well. Always could be better. So give me a setup, a tease with the stat of the day. I'm sorry, this day in Tennessee sports history.
It's Olympic related because the Olympics are over. They ended yesterday. Okay. And it's 40 years ago today, the 1984 Olympics wrapped up. That was the first time ever that was
the one the Soviets dominated.
No, this one was in LA.
Oh, I know they weren't in that one.
Yeah,
they boycotted it.
Yes, that is true. You're right. So 1984 was the first time Tennessee took home 4 gold medals from an Olympics. It ended this day 40 years ago in Los Angeles. They had one in 100-meter hurdles, Benita Fitzgerald, Sam Grady in the 100-meter relay, and then 2 women's basketball players, Leah Henry and Cindy Noble, won gold for Team USA. Pat Summitt was the coach of Team USA that year in 1984. They took home gold. So 4 different Vols took home gold. Since then, 4 Vols took home gold in Atlanta in 1996. 4 took home gold in Athens in 2004. And then 4 took home gold in London in 2012. But 84 was the first time that Tennessee had 4 Vols take home gold. And it was also when Pat Summitt, I think that was her first year coaching the Olympic team, and she led them to gold. And that wrapped up 40 years ago today, which is ironic because it was in LA and it will be in LA in 2028.
Yeah, that is ironic. I wonder how many Lady Vols have won a gold in basketball.
Oh, I could probably look that up right now.
I mean, why don't you do that while I assess where we are in the poll question? I am blank about Tennessee's running back position. 80% of you say okay with it, which is not a ringing endorsement. It makes me want to reset it to some extent. 20% say very concerned. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, I'm just going to read. I've never done this before. But I'm going to redo it. I'm going to say I am blank with Tennessee's running back position. And if you don't mind, yes, I may ask you to vote again here because I want to change it up a little bit. Because I left out an option, running back position. So why is this a topic of discussion? Because over the weekend, Deshaun Bishop on Friday got the majority of the carries. Dylan Sampson was held out. Peyton Lewis limited in what he got. So I'm going to say I am blank with Tennessee's running back position. Good with it, okay with it, or I'm going to add in scared to death. Okay, so that gives us an option if there are any people out there that are ready to sound the alarm. You have that option. Please hit the like and subscribe button. So how many Lady Vols have won how many gold medals? Caleb, were you able to find that?
Working on it now. As of 2012, there were 9. I don't believe any Lady Vols have been on a national team since then. You guys can correct me on that. So I still believe it is at 9. I'm trying to confirm that on my own as we speak. But yeah, I do believe it's 9. Tamika Catchings is by far the most successful of all of them. She won, let's see, how many has she won? Tamika Catchings has won 4 gold medals, I believe, 2004, 2008, 2012, 2016. Probably the best pro player all time from Tennessee, although Candace Parker has a very strong case against her.
Both pretty elite. Both pretty elite. I mean, you could argue they're the top 2 women's players, top 2 of the top 5 or 10 in the history of women's basketball.
in the history of the WNBA, and
or just women's basketball in general. I prefer how basketball does it, like with their Hall of Fame, because they include your college career. I wish football did it like that.
I do too, actually. That would be kind of awesome.
I wish there was a football Hall of Fame instead of an NFL and college football Hall of Fame, because the college one's too difficult to get in my opinion. 4 downs right now.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
4 Downs is brought to you today by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Will the Vols have more sacks than they've ever had in their history? Why are we going in this direction? Caleb Calhoun will set us up. First, Cooper, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thanks, Coop. What down?
Tennessee Center Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
What did Bill Connolly of ESPN have to say about James Pierce, Caleb?
So this was recent. Bill Connolly was talking about different defensive players, and he talked about James Pierce as the edge rusher. And he said, quote, James Pierce might be the best defender in the country after finishing 3rd in the SEC in sacks as a sophomore last year. Talked about how he added 27 stops, 2 forced fumbles, an interception that he returned for a touchdown. And basically, this solidifies what we've been talking about for a while, that James Pierce is transcendently great, one of the greatest all time, and could I mean, we're hearing talks about him as a number 1 draft pick. So the question then becomes, could he spur Tennessee to setting the record for the most team sacks in school history?
Okay, which leads us to second down, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Who holds the record?
I believe I actually don't have that one up on me yet. Sorry.
So
but I'm trying to pull it up now.
Okay, so if James Pierce, and let's look at, before we really talk about James Pierce as being one of the elite players, I want to talk about some of the elite players that are out there, because it depends where you stand in terms of exactly what you think about James Pierce. Travis Hunter at Colorado, and we're going to talk a little bit about Colorado here shortly, is one of those. Caleb Downs, who is now at Ohio State, who Ohio State bought away from Alabama, is another one of those. Harold Perkins, linebacker at LSU, is going to be up for the Nagurski Award. The other would be Michael Williams of Georgia. So those would be a couple to keep an eye on in the SEC. How do you think James Pierce stacks up to those guys?
Oh, I think he stacks up incredibly well. One, because many of them are, let's just call it what it is. Somebody like Harold Perkins is going to be playing out of position this year because they're going to be forcing him into middle linebacker again. This is why Brian Kelly, I had him on my coaches who could be on the hot seat at the end of the year, because there's absolutely no reason for Harold Perkins to be middle linebacker. So I think James Pierce will stack up as the best front 7 player at the very least in college football this year.
6'5", 265 pounds. It sounds like the Leonard Little at linebacker test all over to me. Yes.
And the record is, for a team, 50 sacks. They got it in 2000 with Henderson and Hainsworth when Henderson won the Outland Trophy that year.
I thought that was right. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, the Tennessee traditional, rickterryjewelry.com, rickterryjewelry.com. Nobody makes fantastic jewelry, and nobody Googles. Nobody makes fantastic jewelry like Rick Terry, and nobody Googles quite as fast as the one, the only Caleb Calhoun. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. What player has to have an incredible season at the other defensive end? And I know some people have gotten on to us about whether we're using edge or defensive end, the other edge rusher, whatever you want to call it. Who needs to step up so that the protection is balanced, so you're not able to overcompensate for a James Pierce, and you have to be worried about even the interior guys? Who are some guys that need to step up to help Pierce lead them to that record?
Well, on the other side, and we talked about this last week, but Dominic Bailey and Joshua, we'll get to Joshua. Dominic Bailey and Tyree West, one of them has to emerge. I think Dominic Bailey has to be serviceable. Tyree West needs to emerge into a superstar. He needs to be a star. There's a lot of potential there. I think he could be a very good player. Tyree West is my pick. I think Joshua Josephs does need to step up as a backup.
Well, and Joseph, I think they're going to play on pass rushing situations sometimes on the other side. So if we're strictly talking pass rushing, I will say Josephs has to step up. I'll go different than you. And then the interior guys are a given, right? Look, Amari Thomas has to be Amari Thomas. We didn't give a lot of love to Bryson Easton last year, but those defensive tackles have to continue to make a push. And then the flip side, whether it's Tyree West or whether it's Joshua Josephs in the pass rush situations, has to keep the offense balance and what they protect. What down are we on, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Okay. So 50 sacks. I'll ask you to make the prediction. Tennessee will have more or less than 50 sacks this year.
They will have more.
How many?
And they may not.
Can you check and see how many they had last year? This seems like a heck of a prediction. 50 sacks is a lot. I mean, that's like an average of like 4.4 per game, Caleb. I mean,
yeah.
And really, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2000, did they play one less game?
Yeah, they only played 12 games that year.
Well, no. So Tennessee plays 12 now. Did they play 11 or 12 in 2000?
They played 11, but I counted the bowl game. So
Okay.
that's what a 12.
Gotcha. Okay. So what did they have last year? Do you have that off the top?
They had 41 sacks last year. Now remember this. They didn't get the big. Here's why it's going to be bigger this year. And it may not all come from Pierce. The sacks are as much about the offense as they are the defense. And,
Amen. You beat me to the point.
Yep. And by the way, that's what makes for those who don't know, that's what makes the 2000 team so darn special with those sacks, because Tennessee was playing a freshman quarterback in Casey Clausen half the season. Remember how many tight battles they were locked in, Dave, that year? And they were low scoring, tight battles. Those aren't usually where you rack up sacks. But John Henderson was just that good as a defensive tackle in 2000. And so I think that this year it's more about, because Nico will keep getting leads and they have a generational edge rusher in James Pierce, that's going to speak for itself. But I think Tyree West and Dominic Bailey will be solid on the other side. Joshua Joseph will be great coming off the bench. Other guys will be getting in, and teams will be forced into obvious passing downs and desperately trying to come back. And you will see sacks galore with this. Oh, I didn't even mention, by the way, Arian Carter. He's going to be a sack machine at linebacker.
Yeah, fair enough. By the way, we have an awesome announcement. We have a brand new prize to give away, and it is a mini helmet. It's the orange helmet with the white stripe. And all you have to do is join Hooker's Corner, and that is our August prize. So we'll be giving away in a couple of weeks. And we want to thank our friends at Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best in sports memorabilia, daily updates, facebook.com. Of course, Sports Treasures TN. Follow them at Sports Treasures TN. You can join Hooker's Corner. If we can put that link in the message board, that would be great. You get increased recruiting information, more interaction with me and Caleb, and also you will have an opportunity to win weekly prizes, which include t-shirts, and our monthly prize, which is an autographed helmet. And I don't want to give it away yet, Caleb, who it is, but it's a guy that we've talked about a lot on the program, and I haven't even told you who it is. So who would be a fantastic, who right now is at the top of the news that would be a fantastic monthly prize? Because that's what we give away, is fantastic monthly prizes thanks to Sports Treasures. The stat of the day, Jim Harbaugh is an honorary captain, as Michigan says, why don't you go stick it, NCAA? And I'll tell you who that helmet is autographed by in 2 minutes with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
his vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Before we get to the stat of the day, real quickly, the top odds for winning the Nagurski Award, which goes to the top defensive player in the nation. I mentioned the names. Out of cornerback Travis Hunter, Colorado, I mentioned him because you know his name. And not you, Caleb, but our listeners. The safety Caleb Downs at Ohio State, you know his name, played at Alabama. And then linebacker Harold Perkins, LSU. And lastly, Michael Williams of Georgia. As far as Pierce winning the Defensive Player of the Year award, either in the SEC or in the nation, which would be the Nagurski Award, Michael Williams, to me, is the biggest challenge. He's been projected also number one in the 2025 NFL draft. But you bring up a great point. Harold Perkins playing out of position. Caleb Downs is in a new home. So how does it work out for him? I think he'll be just fine. And Travis Hunter, and we're going to get into a little bit of Deion Sanders here, becoming the next Derek Dooley. Travis Hunter could be in the middle of a season that goes off the rails, Caleb. So when you look at those, the only one that I think that a lot of NFL scouts might take right now over James Pierce would be Michael Williams, but I believe the opinions would be pretty split.
Yeah, and Michael Williams did have a regression last year from his freshman year. So, there are some real questions about that. Teams have schemed for him in a certain way. And also, again, look, Georgia's more talented than Tennessee. They just play a different style. They're not going to play the game where they get giant leads and force you an obvious passing down. So he's not going to have the chance to rack up stats the way James Pierce will for Tennessee this year.
No, I agree with that. Stat of the day is brought to you by our good friends at Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive work. Guys, that's where I go for my automotive work, downtown Chattanooga. And that's where my family goes on Cherokee Boulevard. Go to qualitytirepros.com, qualitytirepros.com. The stat of the day is, Caleb?
I'd like to send a shout out to two very legendary Tennessee coaches that we all hold in high esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Butch Jones and Jeremy Pruitt. And
how can the stat of the day involve Butch Jones and Jeremy Pruitt? And we're going to bring up Derek Dooley here in a moment.
So it is August the 12th, 8-12. Not factoring in the games he had to forfeit because now his record looks even worse. Through their first 20 games at Tennessee, both Butch Jones and Derek Dooley went 8-12. Yeah.
Both coaches. And do you know what Josh Heupel went in that same time
his
period?
First 20 games? I can do the math in my head because he went 7-6 his first year, and he started 7-0 the next year, so he went 14-6.
So that's significantly better. I mean, two games is significantly better.
He wasn't 2 games better. They went 8-12. He went 14-6.
It's backward.
Yeah. He went 14-6. They went 8-12. Like this is like 180 of 180s. Now they both Pruitt and Jones went 5-7 their first year and started 3-5 the next. Now to be fair to both of them, on this I will say I'm going to give them a break. And I know Dave, you don't want to give either of them breaks, but I'm going to give them a break. Butch Jones, after his 5th loss in 2014 to make him 8-12. That was the year that was the game Tennessee switched to Dobbs against Alabama. Then Dobbs took off. They had a strong finish to the year, finished 7-6. Pruitt got to 8-12. He actually started 7-12, but in 2019, Tennessee blew out South Carolina for what turned out to be their first win ever over Will Muschamp. And that got Pruitt to 8-12. And then they actually closed out, won every game to finish the season 8-5. But yeah, Tennessee lost all 4 times to Will Muschamp when he was at Florida. and they lost the first 3 times to Will Muschamp when he was at South Carolina. They have the distinction of going 0-7 against Will Muschamp and finally beating him in 2019, which got Pruitt to 8-12 as a coach at Tennessee.
You know what's amazing, and we talk about this guy rightly so, Nico. We talk about him a lot, but it's nice to have the right quarterback in position. Tennessee had that in Tyler Bray. But to have the right athletic director and the right coach in position, that's just mandatory. And Tennessee has that. Tennessee doesn't have a goofball athletic director and a goofball head coach and a really talented quarterback, which at Tennessee, Tyler Bray's proof you can go out there and get a really talented guy because you're Tennessee, even if you got a goofball as a head coach.
You're absolutely right. And this was that South Carolina game was the type of game where you saw, like, I can just go down a list of talent. You're like, with the right coach, imagine what they could have done with this game. Because this was the game
which South Carolina game? Tell me.
The one in 2019 with Jeremy Pruitt. You can look at the talent and say, coaching held this team back. Whatever you think of Jared Garantano, he got NFL money, and he went to the NFL. So that game, Dave, Jawan Jennings, 7 catches, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns. Marquez Callaway, 3 catches, 100 yards, a touchdown, and a punt return touchdown. Josh Palmer, 5 catches, 55 yards. Ty Chandler had 78 yards rushing. Everybody I named is in the NFL offensively. Not to mention the fact that you had Darnell Wright, Trey Smith, Wanye Morris all up on the offensive line. Absolutely no excuse for that team not to be to be loaded.
No, I agree. All right, let's turn it to out west for a second, because I think Deion Sanders is becoming the next Derek Dooley, and there's a reason. Let me give you a little bit of background. I was the guy that most oftentimes asked the question that got Derek Dooley really mad, or at least goofy, or at least animated. But I thought that a lot of those situations, whether it's the Rommel and he's the Nazis and he's looking to, or he's talking about he doesn't let his brother come up unannounced, or any of that stuff, I believe firmly that those were signs of pressure, that he acted out that way. And I think you saw that in Butch Jones's final days as a head coach. So what do we see from Deion Sanders over the weekend, Caleb?
He just went at a reporter that I didn't understand why, and it just made no sense. And I'm pulling it up now. Let's see. And here's what he said. And you guys give me your thoughts. This was just a weird way to respond to a reporter.
Okay.
Coach Sean Keeler, the Denver Post. Happy summer, my man.
You don't like us, man. Why do you do this to yourself?
Come on.
You don't like us.
Mark likes me, by the way. Huh? Yeah. Mark said he likes me.
No,
so
but
that's
you don't. Why do you
that's
do this, though?
No, I'm sorry. Two-parter if I could.
No, I'm serious. Why do you do this? Like, you know you don't. Like, why do you do this?
No, it's not about that. Football question.
No, why do you do this? Like, it would be hard for me to really engage in someone I don't like or something I don't like. I'm just asking why. Like, why?
Gotta pay
What
bills,
did I
Coach.
do?
You didn't do anything. It's not about that. But this
But
is a football
why?
question.
I'm asking you why.
Yeah, you can ask. But
that banter went on for a good another minute after that. And just constantly Deion being like, what? Not letting him ask a question. And it was almost like, I'm just going to say it. It felt like he didn't want to be asked a question because he was worried it'd be a tough question.
Yeah, it felt like he didn't like that guy. And that guy's with the Denver Post, so he has some power. It sounds like to me that he doesn't like that guy. Now, Meat Drinker asked, how would have Dave handled that if Deion would have done that to me? Honestly, I would have handled it about the same way, because newspapers buy inks and buckets. So I would have let him finish off what he wanted to say, and then he's the news for the day and maybe the next day, and then maybe I got something to say a little bit later. But does this because it was so unprompted. It wasn't one of those questions like, what in the world were you thinking when? Because it was so unprompted. Is this the first sign of a major crack in Deion's Colorado experiment?
Yes.
I agree. Yes. I totally agree. I think it happens at press conference settings first, and it's stuff that their reporters are already aware of. Did you hear how confident that reporter was that got berated? By the way, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. And it's actually getting more embarrassing. I encourage everybody to go check out Colorado's videos and check out other schools trolling him. This story gets very interesting, Dave. Colorado posted a video of Shedeur Sanders making some impressive throws at a practice, and they tweeted out darts only. Darts, like he's throwing darts. Some Twitter investigative journalists discovered that those videos were very, very highly edited, which is a very weird thing to do, if you ask me.
No, it's not very weird. It's very orchestrated and premeditated. It's very transparent that they want to make him look better than he is.
Yes, which is crazy because I actually think he's pretty darn good.
Okay,
as it is.
But this feeds your narrative last week that you think he's going to cruise after his kids are gone, right?
Yes, I think he's using this as a vessel for his kids.
Okay, so if he's making his players look better at Colorado, then that should just concern other teams that are preparing for Colorado. But it helps his kids theoretically for the NFL. So is that his mindset? Is it as simple as that?
I think so. And people have gotten comfortable trolling him now. People have gotten in on the joke. So Arkansas, the University of Arkansas, and then the Big Ten Network, and then the Fiesta Bowl, all showed videos of practice of blatantly edited throws and said darts only. So you have a bowl game, a conference, and a team just going out of their way to make fun of Colorado for this.
Okay, so to the poll question, and I did replace it. Which coach is most embarrassing? Butch Jones, Jeremy Pruitt, Derek Dooley, or Deion Sanders? Sanders gets 47% of the vote. Dooley with 24%, Pruitt 18%, Butch Jones 16%. I would have Jones number one by far because of things I know behind the scenes, him being a sociopath and being a really
unintelligent sociopath, by the way.
Yes. The guy that thinks he's a genius that's not very smart. And I thought that he treated his players poorly, treated reporters and coaches poorly across the board. So to me, it's Butch Jones with a bullet. It's like number one, and then you have to drop down several places to get number two. But as far as most embarrassing, man, Deion Sanders, I have trouble putting him above Derek Dooley because Derek Dooley had multiple examples. And in Deion Sanders, for all the bluster that goes with it and all that I believe in my heart that this will come crashing down in a negative fashion, I still say he made Colorado respectable in year one, and we talked about him. So I have to give him that over Derek Dooley.
Yeah, I will, because I still think Deion could actually work out. I don't think it will at this point. I think he's using it as a vessel, like I said. But if he really was committed, it could. So I'm not ready to fully write him off yet. I'm really not, because I saw, look, he actually still has a pretty solid staff. Shedeur Sanders is a heck of a quarterback. I mean, I think Colorado should go to a bowl game this year. They should get 6 or 7 wins, quite honestly.
They should.
So
I think the biggest question for him, Caleb, is next year. What happens when he doesn't have his kids? And when I say his kids, I'm not just talking about Shedeur and his team, his brother. I'm talking about Travis Hunter as well. I mean, that's a guy he brought from him from Jackson State. So when he doesn't have his kids, I think that's the greatest challenge, because they could be a bowl team this year. And then if his recruiting isn't up to snuff, they could slip in 2025. And then he's suddenly recruiting uphill, and he's never had to recruit uphill. He's only had to recruit downhill. At Jackson State, he was able to tell people other schools can't offer you this kind of NIL. I can. At Colorado, he's able to recruit downhill because he's in vogue. Now, you and I who know football question that, but he's had to recruit downhill, and it's been easy. What happens, and I think it's already begun because they rank 83rd in the 2025 class. What happens when he has to recruit uphill?
Well, and this is why I actually put Deion above Butch Jones. Deion is very open about where they are with trying to acquire talent and things like that. You know, he says, we're going through the transfer portal. This is not the standard that we want Colorado to be at, but we have to do this now. Butch Jones, guys, this is why he's most embarrassing. And because you guys didn't vote Butch Jones number one, I just have to break this down for a minute. Butch Jones told reporters his first year at Tennessee that they would become more successful than Alabama in recruiting because they had a better juice bar. Yeah, he said that. He then went to use this that we all know about Champions of Life and the turnover trash can and the the 5-star hearts. But he actually said when he took the job at Tennessee that he'd be able to out-recruit Alabama because he could sell athletes on the juice bar. That is embarrassing.
It's one heck of a juice bar.
Deion Sanders would never be that embarrassing. Sorry, he just wouldn't. He wouldn't. Now, Derek Dooley might, because Derek Dooley would do something like the whole Twitter deceptively edited videos. That's an embarrassing moment, like how Impossible is Nowhere is. Or what is it? Not Impossible.
They had the locker room, for those that don't know, a wrap on it like they do on cars, and it said opportunity is now and here. But they put it together and it said opportunity is nowhere.
And Derek Dooley drew that up.
So I'm curious, you on the message boards, who's most embarrassing? Our poll question, which is on there. Butch Jones now is tied with Deion Sanders. He's making a real run. I think it was the juice bar reference. I think that might have done it. Earlier, our poll question was, I am blank with Tennessee's running back position. Okay with it, got 60%. Good with it, got 35%. Scared to death, got 4%. In case you didn't notice, in case you weren't listening at the beginning of the show, we discussed how Tennessee leaned on the young man from Carnes, whose name suddenly escapes my mind.
Deshaun Bishop.
Deshaun Bishop. I keep wanting to
I almost said a bad word right there. That was a total accident, guys.
Deshaun Bishop. He was your guy in practice number 1. My take is that I want to see scrimmage number 2. And when I see that, if it's still mostly Deshaun Bishop, I got a concern, because I think the second and third scrimmage will be the most important. The fourth is most oftentimes special teams related and specialty situations. Give me 15 seconds, and I'm going to get you updated with Jim Harbaugh, and he's named an honorary captain, and why Tennessee should just cheat.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Commitment coming down today, Caleb, that we expect to go to the University of Georgia instead of Tennessee. He's considered Tennessee. You might want to update us on his name and announcement time. I think he goes this afternoon. But we think he's going to end up at Georgia. So we want to take a look at Tennessee and what they're doing in Georgia as far as recruiting, because we all know how key that is. First, however, Jim Harbaugh has been named the honorary captain for an upcoming game, this coming just days after he was given a 4-year show cause. I'm not even sure if he's allowed on campus anymore, Caleb, but what do you make of Jim Harbaugh being named an honorary captain for an upcoming game?
Okay. Is Michigan trolling us? And the reason I say that is last year when he was suspended, remember they took a delay of game in honor of Jim Harbaugh for his suspension?
Yes.
And then Sherrod Moore, when they beat Ohio State, was crying in the interview. He's like, "This is for you, Jim Harbaugh. This is for you." I'm like, and now they're like making him an honor. Is he dying of cancer? Like, is there? I mean, does he have a disabled son? Like, does he like? I don't know. Is he like? Does he have Lou Gehrig's disease? I mean, guys, they're treating him like he's. This is stuff you do for like like cancer kids or people who have passed away or something sad like that, right?
So let me ask you, do you think this is more in response to the NCAA or just because they like him for a mysterious reason, which you're alluding to?
Well, he did win him a national title, so I'll give him that. But I think it's
pretty big.
Yeah, it's a big one. And he got him 3 straight Big Ten titles and beat Ohio State 3 straight times, largely because Ryan Day ain't that great of a coach the way we all thought. I got to be honest. I don't know. It feels like a troll. There's no way they could think this is serious. There's no way they could think we would take them seriously being this emotional. An honorary captain is, you don't sit there and, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if Tennessee does this, Dave, but like, they don't name somebody an honorary captain because they were a great player, a great coach, or something sentimental about them to make them an honorary captain. Like, I don't know if Reggie White passes away, I think his wife's an honorary captain at a game in 2005, something like that. Not like, oh, this person just coached for us. He just left us for the NFL. Now let's bring him back as an honorary captain after he just bolted on us for the NFL. How many times did he try to leave Michigan, Dave? You know this. Like, wasn't it every single year?
It's been every year the past 3 years. So it's been the 2 previous years and the one where he finally got the Chargers job.
Yeah. This feels like a troll. I know people think maybe they're serious about it. I don't know the culture, but this feels like a troll. And you're right. It feels like a troll in the sense of, added to that, let's stick our middle finger to the NCAA.
I don't think it's a troll as much as it's the latter. I just think it's a statement. I think they knew that this was coming down. They knew that it was going to drop on a Friday, which it did it not? It kind of got lost in the news shuffle. And then they dropped this and they look good. And everybody's talking about Michigan. I think they believe that much in themselves and that little in the NCAA, Caleb, where they're saying, hey, we're going to control the narrative here. Jim Harbaugh's still a star. We don't care if he has a 4-year show cause or not. And in all honesty, if this is 20 years ago and the NCAA is powerful, then you're stupid. But now go for it. Troll them. It probably gets some recruits excited, Caleb.
I think that's what this is. They're letting people know, like, we're sticking it to the NCAA. We're going to make recruits excited. Can Tennessee, because of the whole Nico thing, can they take an honorary delay of game in honor of Nico Imaliava beating the NCAA this year?
That seems like a little bit of a stretch. But let me ask you seriously, what does Tennessee take from something like this? Because Tennessee, I've had shirts printed. They're on the forefront of challenging the NCAA. They were flying Nico, in which they got supposedly in trouble for, and then were able to win the court case, and they didn't get in trouble for. They were flying Nico before it was considered copacetic. So now, if I'm Tennessee, am I being even more aggressive? Because I'm not worried about the NCAA at all anymore. And I never would have said that just 5 years ago.
So if you ever cover political news, one of the common things that politicians do is they will leak a fake scandal of some sorts, maybe even be a real scandal, actually, just to bait the other side into making a big deal out of it, knowing that the other side making a big deal out of it will turn people off the other side because they don't want a big deal made out of it. Does that make sense? If you take it to the nth degree, many people think that Bill and the Monica Lewinsky scandal in the 90s, that Bill Clinton set that up just so the Republicans would impeach him, just so they would suffer losses in the House of Representatives race in the 98 midterms, because people didn't care about the impeachment. People think that it's that level of baiting that goes on in politics sometimes. I wonder if Tennessee baited the NCAA to go after them, and they were planning for it and they were ready for it, and they knew they could get PR with the NCAA going after them. And so then they decided, okay, and now we're going to nuke them with the Nico situation. That's what it feels like. And I wonder if somebody I'm dead serious. It makes you think that maybe somebody maybe Michigan's doing that. Maybe they baited the NCAA the whole time just so they could stick it to the NCAA when the NCAA came for them.
Well, they would have had to bait them over a year ago because the latest show cause for Harbaugh was not from the Connor Stallions thing, which is still coming down the pike.
Yes, no, that's true. I don't think they're going to get it. I think they know nothing's going to happen to them with the Connor Stallions thing. They're leaking this. They're leaking this because of that. So I think they know they can't be got on Connor Stallions. Honestly, I do. I think they know that.
Okay. If I'm the NCAA, does this affect how I come down on them on Connor Stallions? I mean, yes, it does. I'm mad.
Well, the thing is,
I'm going to come down on them, but it doesn't matter, Caleb, because they have no power. So what am I going to do now?
Well, the thing is, they can't get them. The NCAA is not going to be able to prove they cheated.
Well,
they don't have the
but
they don't have the resources.
Even with ironclad proof, do they have any power?
I might think they still have power. They just gave Jim Harbaugh a show call. So they do have power. It's not like, and the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be compliant with the NCAA giving somebody a show cause. It's not like otherwise Nick Saban would have hired Jimmy Pruitt back last year as defensive coordinator, even though the NCAA wasn't going to let that happen.
Well, you're right, but you can hire a coach with a show cause. It's not a suspension.
Oh, you can? I thought you couldn't.
You can hire them. You just have to show cause why that person is not going to cheat. It's an incredible loophole to jump through. But you could hire them. Nobody wants to, and you probably and
he probably can't recruit at that point.
Okay, let me ask you this. In all sincerity, Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL. He's as successful in the NFL this go round as Nick Saban, which we know is not going to happen because Harbaugh's been successful in the NFL. And
Nick Saban would have been, but that's a different story.
Okay. The Sharon Moore goes 2-10 this year. Okay.
Not going to happen. That bad,
I know. But Jim Harbaugh calls and says, sometimes you really have to get away from something to realize how much you missed it and how much you loved it. Is there a chance I could come back? Michigan would take him back in 2025. 2025.
You think? You think they would take him back and just snub it to the? Do you think the Big Ten would let Michigan do that?
Yes, because they're stronger than. Listen, here's the hierarchy of college football now. It's SEC. You might argue Big Ten with the TV contract. Then it's NCAA. Then it's Big 12. As far as power in college football, the NCAA is third at best, and they might be behind the Big 12 before long.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. I mean, I agree with you on that, but I think the Big Ten knows, though, that they want to keep some level of uniformity with what they're doing. So I think because of that, they'll respect the NCAA's wishes sometimes, I think. And so you think Michigan would be that good? I think Michigan would just identify another coach somewhere else and hire him. There's going to be somebody they can find.
Well, no, I agree. I don't think they would. I'm just saying if it happened, if it was in the air. Speaking of in the air, the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. HOOKED for 10% off. How old is Jim Harbaugh? Isn't he like 62, 60, somewhere in there? If you had to predict, will Jim Harbaugh be back in college football at some point? Because he rubs everybody the wrong way. He's going to rub the Chargers the wrong way eventually and be back in college football. And I think that's going to be the ultimate statement that the NCAA has no power. If he wants to coach, he's going to be back in college football. How old is he now, Caleb?
He is 60, right at 60.
Okay. So he's going to be 65 looking for a job. I mean, based off his history, whether or not he has success, he's going to get tired of the surroundings, or they're going to get tired of him.
Don't you think he's going to grind himself at some point? He grinds everybody else around him. So he burns you out so fast. It's funny how he himself is not burnt out from this.
I think that's why he wants something fresh.
That's why he always moves around, because he gets so burnt out with what he's doing at one place.
Yeah, I think he gets burnt out. I think that's I think that's the issue there. Portions of the program brought to you by our good friend at a Neubert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Joe Neubert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. Just remember that name. It is Joe Neubert Collision Center. Neubert Collision Center. Support our sponsors. That's why we are here. And I do want to remind everybody about Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge, because it is awesome. It has to do with Hooker's Corner, but you don't have to spend a dime. Just be a subscriber of this channel and be a member of Hooker's Corner, and you can be a free member, and you will be in the drawing for a Garmin watch worth over $1,000. Please take the time. The QR code is right there if you're on a video platform to join now. You can join for free. Viewers, listeners, readers, welcome to enter by joining Hooker's Corner free. If you want the increased recruiting coverage, it's just $9.98. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's also free. And then when we hit 8,000 subscribers, we're at about 5,500 now, so it's going to happen in football season. We will draw for a Garmin watch worth over $1,000. Just watch us do that. Caleb, did you like that?
Ah, love it.
I got my moments. All right, Tennessee recruiting in Georgia. How important is it, Caleb Calhoun? Scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it's an 11. I'd say it's more important than in-state recruiting.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just like the big stars. You know, everybody talks about the golden trio, Kosi Coleman, Deion Grant, and Jamal Lewis, but it's like just regular guys you fill your roster with, you know what I mean, coming out of Georgia. You got to load up with them, and it's a big deal for Tennessee to recruit that state. Okay,
let's take a look at how Tennessee and other schools are doing in the state of Georgia. So if we want to look at some of the top prospects and where they are rated, Caleb, I have the 2025 list pulled up. So a couple of prospects at Tennessee has already landed. Lagonza Hayward, safety, 6'1", 200 pounds. He, for some reason, was one of those guys that fans attached themselves to. But the other one that we haven't talked as much about, because Hayward, I think, kind of enjoyed the recruiting process, is Travis Smith, wide receiver out of Westlake, Atlanta, Georgia. Now, he's a guy that there's no question Georgia really wanted. They wanted Hayward too, but these are two significant wins in that state at key positions for the Vols.
Oh, those were gigantic wins. Very underrated. This is the type of pipeline Tennessee wants to build. The key with Tennessee and Georgia is when Georgia's now again, there's two strategies here. When Ray Goff is there, you go raid the state. You know what I mean? You take what you can. When a Mark Richt or Kirby Smart is there, and I know Kirby Smart has been more successful, but I kind of put them in a similar tier in terms of locking off Georgia talent, don't you?
Fair.
Yeah. So when they're there, your job is to try to pluck a few of the elite prospects out. You don't have to beat Georgia, but you got to pluck some away from Georgia. You got to pluck a few. And I think they're doing that right now with Kirby Smart. Josh Heupel's plucking some.
Before we get into more specific names, Caleb, I ask you this. What is more important, North Carolina or Georgia? Oh, man, I got him thinking now.
That's a really tough one. Because, like, the thing is, you want to eliminate competition in North Carolina. You have to expect that you won't be able to eliminate Georgia competition all the time. I'm going to go Georgia, and here's why I'm going to go Georgia. I just think about this. I know back in the 90s, Sean Bryson and Little were from North Carolina, but, you know, Georgia was really down in the 90s. North Carolina was actually the best it ever was during the 90s because that was when Mac Brown really had them rolling the first time. Remember that? Remember they were like number 2 one year, I think, in 97? So, obviously, and Tennessee was still at its best talent-wise. Why? Because they were raiding Georgia. So I'm going to go Georgia just because just the sheer volume of athletes in Georgia. However, because Georgia's good right now, I may see North Carolina because you would like to lock off the state. With North Carolina and South Carolina, Tennessee, with Georgia, they have to just get a hodgepodge of athletes. North and South Carolina, Tennessee wants to lock those off as pipelines. I mean, again, in the 90s, South Carolina was Tennessee South. Should have been South Tennessee with their recruiting.
If I said the Carolinas and Georgia, would you say the Carolinas?
The Carolinas. Yeah, the Carolinas.
Just because the number? Okay.
Just
yeah,
because the number.
I would agree with that. So let's take a look at the 2025 prospects out of the state of Georgia. So Georgia's doing just fine on the elite guys. Elijah Griffin at Savannah, Georgia. Zayden Walker of Ellaville, Georgia, and Justice Terry, Manchester, Georgia, play defensive line, linebacker, and defensive line, respectively. All three committed to Georgia. Then you have Josh Petty, number 4 in the state of Georgia, going to Tech. Georgia with 2 more, 5 and 6, in Isaiah Gibson and Elias Williams. Then it gets a little bit interesting, and one of the guys that I think you're going to see more competition from than just the Bulldogs, because you have Tavion Wallace, who is a linebacker who's committed to Arkansas, but there could be a change there. So let's wait and see. You have Julian Lewis, a quarterback. I know Tennessee doesn't need a quarterback for the next seemingly 15 years, but he's committed to Southern California. Could be a change there. Daryl Johnson at linebacker at number 9 is committed to Alabama. And I don't know how good Kalen DeBoer is going to be. I think they'll be pretty good. I can tell you he's not going to be the defensive coach that Nick Saban was. Then you have Kevin Wynn rounds out the top 10. He's committed to Florida State out of Greensboro. Hayward, for the record, is listed at 11. And then you have Travis Smith, who's listed at the number 21 prospect in the state of Georgia. I don't want to forget Christian Gass out of Eastside, who's committed to Tennessee, and he's listed at 42. So I got 2 top 15 guys and a top 50 guy. Are you good with that? Are you happy with that? Or is this where Tennessee can expect to be under Kirby Smart and they have to deal with it in other areas of the country?
I think it honestly is where Tennessee has to expect to be under Kirby Smart, and they have to deal with it in other areas of the country. It's just too difficult. Where Tennessee's window is right now, Dave, is South Carolina, because Clemson is reeling as a program. I think Tennessee can really take over the state of South Carolina, and they should focus heavily on plucking recruits out of there. They should be going after Mazio Bennett now. They should have had him to begin with. They would have had that fluke South Carolina game not happen. I think Tennessee needs to, and also, how about just the Carolinas in general? Because North Carolina, they're starting to make inroads again there, largely because I don't think Mac Brown has the same pizzazz he had just 3 years ago at North Carolina. So I think this is as good as you can hope for at Georgia, and that's fine if you start plucking talent out of the Carolinas at will.
I think Tennessee can do better. And I say that because there are a lot of – now, the elite, you're going to be lucky to pluck one of those out of the top 5. For instance, out of the top 5 right now, Georgia Tech has one commitment, Josh Petty. But you're going to be lucky to get one out of the top.
Expected commitment. As we speak right now, Josh Petty's expected to commit to Georgia Tech.
Expected to. Yeah, I misspoke. So but I think you can climb into the top 10. I mean, Lagonza Hayward is at 11. I think you can get into the top 10. And the reason I say that is because you've got Arkansas, South Carolina, Alabama, Florida State that all have commitments inside the top 10. Now, I would offer this. Look at the 2026 class. Xavier Griffin is committed to Southern California. You and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but believe that there very well could be a change with Lincoln Riley at Southern California. If I'm Tennessee, I'm not taking his recent commitment as gospel. I'm involved with him, and Tennessee has not been to this point. He's the number 1 linebacker in the 2026 class.
Yeah, and if you're a linebacker, why the heck would you ever want to go commit to Lincoln Riley?
I have no idea.
Right?
I mean, it seems like you're going to be running around lost for the majority of your college career.
Yeah. It makes no sense that you would want to do that. So I think that's
the thing it does tell me is that he wants to leave the area, which is a positive for Tennessee, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now he may want to leave the South altogether. So we have to, you don't know if he wants to just go to Cali or something like that. So I have to pay attention to that. But you're right. I would go all in on him too. I'd work him really, really, really hard. But we'll have to see where it goes. Dorian Barney's also committed for 2026. He's committed to Alabama. The number 9 ranked cornerback, the number 9 ranked player in the state, cornerback, a 4-star. We don't know what's in store with Kalen DeBoer. And here's the other part, Dave, we're not talking about. We don't know what's in store for Georgia. Look, that culture issue that we're talking about, I've talked about this before. and you've talked about it too, discipline derails programs in a couple of ways. One, people lose respect for you as the authority figure. But the other big one, and this is, Florida still has not recovered from this. Parents of recruits, guardians of recruits, even if they come from rough backgrounds, even if the parents are not like, two-parent households like we are, actually more so in those cases, you know this, Dave, you cover recruiting. Many parents are very, very concerned about culture of programs where kids are getting into trouble. And
my son's about the age of recruitment, a little older, and your son will be one day too. I can tell you right now that if he came to me and he said, I'm one of those guys that can go, I'm an anywhere guy. I think there are somewhere guys, nowhere guys, and anywhere guys. I think some guys have options, some guys have no options, and some guys can go like Nico anywhere he wants to. I'm an anywhere guy, Dad, and I'm considering Georgia. My response, and I know I cover Tennessee, and a lot of people are going to think that this is not being objective. My response would be, I have serious concerns about their traffic issues, and I would like for you to take a second look. Now, if he told me he was absolutely in love, I wouldn't stop him. It wouldn't be a deterrent factor, but would it be a conversation? Caleb, you now have a son. I mean, he's not recruiting age yet. He's going to be a part of the class, 38?
2042.
2042. But wouldn't that be a discussion?
Oh, that's absolutely a discussion. That's absolutely a discussion. And here's the big think about this, Dave. Your son, you're raised in a healthy environment, two-parent household, all that. Imagine if you're a single parent, you live on a rough side of town, and your son is vulnerable to getting involved in bad things. You know what I mean? Just because of the environment he grew up in. Aren't you more concerned then by the school and the culture of the school?
Yes.
If they pick, like, if you're from like inner city Atlanta or inner city Memphis or like inner city wherever, and your kid is just like one step away from like being recruited by a gang, basically, you are desperately not trying to send him to Georgia or Florida. Right?
Yeah, but Caleb, I don't just think it's inner city. I think it's rural too. I mean, what we used to do in Powell, Tennessee, there was nothing to do. There wasn't even a movie theater. What did we do? And my son's age, I mean,
a drag race.
Yeah, we drove around on the back roads, see how fast we could do it. Sometimes there was beer involved. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that, but I was 19 years old. And so I think whether you're rural or inner city or whatever, I still like fast cars to this day. And maybe I wouldn't have if I had something else to do when I was a kid. It would be, whether or not you're rural or inner city, it would be a major.
Well, I was thinking like the culture. No, you're right. I was thinking more like the culture of Tennessee in 2005. Or Florida in 2008. You know what I mean? But you're right. It doesn't matter. I don't want to say like inner city rural. I just meant in general, like from a class structure. If you grow up poor, single parent, you are adjacent to falling into a trap of being around some very sketchy people. If you're not careful, your kid, like you could look at him and you're like, you could see $1 million on one hand in the NFL, or you could see dying in a gang at 23 on the other hand. And like, the line is very blurred on what could end up happening with them. You know what I mean? And
Agreed.
if that line is blurred, and if they could easily fall to one way or the other, you're right. You're not sending them to Georgia. You're not sending them to Florida when Urban Meyer's there, and you're not sending them to Tennessee at the end of Philip Fulmer's tenure.
No.
Like, would you have, if your son was 18 when you were covering Tennessee back in 2005, you probably would have told him strongly reconsider going to Tennessee, right? With all the cultural issues there.
Yes. And I think that's what the Mays family did, and people got mad at Cade for it. And I think it was a smart decision because they knew the inner workings there.
They did. They knew Butch Jones had totally lost control of the program.
Yeah. Now, by the same token, I would say this, and guys, I'm not just saying this to endear myself to our fan base, is I would say on the flip side of it, I think the Josh Heupel guy has a really good culture going on. You might not win a title there, but you might, and you might be a part of a special group of young men.
Which is why Tennessee may be able to pluck some kids out of Georgia now.
I agree. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Be sure and take advantage of all our many advertisers that we love. They are fantastic, and that's why we're here. And we love you being a part of Hooker's Corner as well. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.